Hi everyone and welcome to the Chrissy B Show, and we are the only TV show out there that's dedicated to your mental health, well-being and success. Today we'll be hearing two fascinating and truly inspirational stories that show how we can succeed in life no matter what failures or mistakes we might have made in the past. My main interview today is that of Vinny Gee, who suffered domestic abuse and racial bullying as a child before spending his teenage years drug dealing and homeless. He tells me how he managed to turn it all around to become the #1 personal trainer in the country. Then later on, we'll be watching an exclusive documentary from OnTrax Productions called How Fitness Saved My Life, which tells the story of Micquel Wright, who went from being in and out of prison to becoming a successful bodybuilder. Well, now let's take a look at today's main interview. As a child, Vinny Gee suffered domestic abuse and racial bullying. Following years spent drug dealing and homeless on the streets, he turned his life around to become the #1 personal trainer in the country. Let's hear part 1 of his incredible story. So Vinny, tell us about your childhood growing up. How was that for you?
It was very, very difficult. I had what you call a very abusive parents. We came from a very, very strict upbringing, to the sense of where, you know, we was told to do something, we did it, or we got good hiding. But we came from an area in Nottingham called St Anne's, which was a very poor, poverty area, and my parents were not working, so things were very difficult at home, and there was 7 of us at home. I have 6 sisters, so things were very difficult. Growing up, you know, going to school was very difficult, was bullied a lot. So I was very rebellious, to say the least. And I think that came from the fact that those days in the 60s, there wasn't very many mixed race kids around. There was only 2 of us in school.
Only 2? Wow.
Only 2. So, you know, we was getting it from both sides, from the blacks and the whites. It wasn't just one way, you know, because sometimes the black guys or black women seen us with white girls, you know, we often, you know, get a bit of abuse. So we kind of got it from both sides, the bullying.
Okay. How did that make you feel inside?
How did that make me feel inside? I could never understand it, even though, you know, me being mixed race, I could never understand why blacks would want to give me a hard time, because to the white man, you know, I'm black, you know. So I thought there would have been more understanding, but it wasn't the case. Did you feel insecure about yourself? Did that develop into maybe complexes? Very insecure. I didn't have very many friends when I was a kid. I tended to keep myself to myself, because I felt the friends that I, you know, kind of met, you know, were bullying me and stuff like that, or not really being genuine, you know. So I kind of tried to keep myself to myself.
All right. And then after that period when you were being bullied, what happened after that?
Well, when I was at school, you know, basically I used to run the gauntlet. And the gauntlet was, I always got into school late, because if I got there early, the kids would give me a good hiding before I got into class. So I ended up being late all the time. And therefore the teachers basically didn't have any time for me at all. As a matter of fact, I remember one day in class, a teacher turning around and scolding me and saying, Vinny, you're going to surmount to nothing and you're going to end up in prison, you know.
Why did the teacher
and that's
say that?
in front of the whole of the class.
Yeah.
You know, and I was in the lowest class in the school, which was 1H, which is, you know, for the dunces.
What did you think about yourself?
What did I think about it? Very low esteem. You know, you know, there was nothing I could feel that I could do at that point in time to try and make myself feel better. What I used to try and do was to get involved in sports as much as possible, because that's where I felt that, you know, I could excel. And I did to a certain degree, but it still didn't help, you know, the bullying or anything like that. So I kind of threw myself into every sport there was at school and tried to be #1, Wasn't always the case, but yeah.
I mean, I can just imagine, because you're having such a hard time at home and then going into school and then hard time there. So there was like no escape, was there, for you?
No. I remember at the age of, I can't remember, it was 11 or 12, and so this is just a scenario of me being out with some of the kids at Goose Fair in Nottingham, a famous place where everybody comes to go on the rides. And I remember coming home late. I should have been home at 9 o'clock. I was 5 minutes late, and the kids who used to live next to me were 3 black families in a row: the Mackenzies, the Sabans, and then the Gee. And they were all waiting out on the streets and saying, "You're in trouble."
Oh, gosh.
So there was my father, a very tall figure, stood on the door. And those days, when you walked into our front room, there was a open fire. No central heating in those days. Open fire. And my father had the poker in the fire. The poker is what you use to, stoke up the fire. And that was left in the fire. So it was red hot for when I got to the door, and my father pulled me into the house and then started to beat me with a red hot poker, which I have the scars to show. So those are the kind of things that my father used to beat my sister with a television wire. And I spent a lot of time in the cellar, 3 or 4 hours a day, locked away in the cellar in a cold, dark, dumped place, which, I used to bang on the door. My sisters wouldn't open it, because if they opened it, they got a good hiding. So, they had to listen to me, screaming and shouting for a number of hours.
How old were you at this stage?
This has been going on from the age of 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, till I was finally kicked out at the age of 15. Well, just before my 15th birthday.
And what did you do when you were kicked out? Where did you go?
Basically, for the first night when my mother kicked me out, I slept in the shed in the back garden. But my mother found out about me staying in the shed, because one of my sisters told my mother. So my mother put a lock on the shed. And that's when realisation came in that I was really on the streets.
And how did you survive, Vinny? You're only 15, still a child.
To this day, and I am, 54 now, I didn't see somebody until I was 40. My second wife, 42, told me, "You really need to see somebody, because I'm still waking up with sweats, crying, shouting out names." And I went to see somebody at the age of 42, because I held this barrier.
Yeah.
And this woman really, really, helped me in a way that made me, because, for me, I was rejecting everybody,
Well, because you were rejected, I suppose. You didn't trust anyone, did you?
Yeah, I couldn't. No. The memories for me living on the streets were, one, having to sleep with one eye open and one eye closed. How much sleep do you get? I tell you what I live off now, 2 to 3 hours a night. I can't sleep any longer. I find those things still haunting for me, because it's still playing in my life now, and I'm 54, where I'm not sleeping at night, because I'm constantly, and that's why I got into the drugs, really. The drugs came along because, I'm 15 years of age, 16 years, I've had a gun put to my head and said, "Look, you're going to be a dealer, whether you like it or not, or you're dead." Simple facts. I was not given any choices whatsoever.
Yeah.
And, for me, just even now thinking about it, just makes me feel with so much emotion.
Well, we'll be hearing more from Vinny's shocking story after the break. So don't go away. Welcome back to the Chrissy B Show, everyone, where today we are looking at how you can succeed in life no matter what. So far, we've heard from Vinny Gee about his childhood, being abused by his father and bullied at school. Now let's hear the next part of his inspirational journey. Did you try to maybe ask for help from anyone, like maybe if you saw...
We're talking about in the 60s, darling, there was no help out there.
Huh?
No help whatsoever.
Not even someone that you relate to, a friend or someone?
No, there was no help whatsoever. Every family basically, were looking after their own, because it was that rough. you know. So there is nobody that I can go to talk to. You know, you try to go and speak to a teacher. Teacher doesn't want to know, you know, especially when you have, you know, this reputation at school that, you know, you're no good. But they're making you no good because they're making me rebel, like everybody who's bullying me, making me rebel because nobody's giving me a chance.
And when you say rebel, what kind of things were you doing?
For me, rebelling was, not complying with schools asking me, teachers asking me to do with things, or, you know, not turning up into a class, you know, or running off from school because, you know, I didn't want to be there because somebody, I was just, whatever corner that I was about to take in school, I didn't know whether somebody's going to grab hold of me, slap me, whatever. Do
you think if someone had actually showed you a bit of kindness back then?
There's only one person who showed me some kindness. At the age of 13, I used to work for a milkman called Mick, sorry, not George, Mick. And he's the only guy who showed me some compassion. And I used to go out at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to go and meet Mick, because he used to basically give me bread, milk and yogurts, obviously, because there wasn't much food in the house. So I used to go out, and he's the only guy, Mick, that I will never forget, because he was always there for me. You know, and when he found out I was out on the streets, you know, there was nothing he could do for me but just help me as much as I can when I wanted something. And then I lost touch with Mick because I got so involved with living on the streets and the gangs and everything else that I kind of let an opportunity, but he couldn't help me too much. So I kind of had to stick to this family that, you know, I really didn't want to be with, but they were my family on the streets.
What was that like? Because it was like you were forced into that situation. You didn't have anyone else. What was it like on a daily basis, having to be with people that you didn't really relate to or have anything?
At first it was very difficult because I tended to keep myself to myself. What I did do is the times when I felt vulnerable or it was getting late at night, when I tend to be around people because I was scared then. So, you know, sitting in a house with no windows, in a chair, with no heating, damp walls and everything else, you know, at first it was very difficult for me staying in there on my own. And that's why I kind of attached myself to a bit of a gang, but that gang, majority of them used to just bully me.
So that sort of protection
but it was the only time when I actually felt that a little bit more secure than when I was on my own.
And then Vinny, you ended up in prison. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I ended up in prison. Basically, one day I decided to seek revenge on some of my bullies. I won't lie, I had a drink and I went home, got a baseball bat. No, I didn't go home. I went to one of the houses, got a baseball bat, and I went and beat all 3 of them, of the bullies. So I ended up getting sent to prison for GB8 Section 18, sent to a long-termist prison, which is, again, another frightening thing because the severity of the crime that I did couldn't send me to a short-term prison because it was violence and it was quite a heavy violence charge. So they sent me to a long-termist prison, which was Featherstone in Wolverhampton, which for people who were doing sentences there are 5 and over. When I went there, I was only doing 18 months, but I was walking into this environment which was, I've never experienced it. I was petrified. I cried all the way because first you get sent to Lincoln Prison and then you get designated the prison that they send you to. So I remember, you know, in that bus all the way to Lincoln Prison, I cried like a baby. While I was in the jail at night, I cried like a baby. And then being told that I was being sent to Featherstone, some of the guys went, oh, that's life as jails. You know, you've got to be very careful. So the first day I arrived, what they do is put you in dungarees those days, if you remember dungarees. Yeah. So everybody knows you're the new boy on the block. So, yeah.
What kind of attention did that draw to you?
Well, there was several other guys who came in with me, so do you know what I mean? It kind of made it a little bit easy, but we had our own cells. We weren't two'd up. So that made it a little bit easier for me, and I could cry on my own. Because no con wants to see you crying because they'll slap you.
Yeah.
So yeah, for the first few months it was very difficult. And like I said, I met this guy, this lifer called George. He'd been in there for murdering a bouncer on a door who gave him an hard time. Basically chopped off of his ear off, and George went home, got a gun and shot him. But George, I met George playing table tennis. It's my fault, but I am so very competitive. So I played him and I beat him. And
were you scared to beat someone there in prison?
No, it didn't. You know what? It didn't even compute. Really,
Wow,
didn't even
risky.
think about it. It was risky,
Yeah.
but I did, because some of the guys said to me, "Are you mad?" afterwards. But you know, when I beat him, he shook my hand, and we played every single day for the time that I was there.
Did he ever beat you?
A couple of times.
Couple of times, okay.
Couple of times. And he did genuinely beat me. I wouldn't certainly let anybody beat me because I'm too competitive for that.
Yeah.
But George, basically, I was told that I've got an opportunity of parole. So George, you have to write the reasons why you feel that you should be considered for parole. And George was a very, very, very intelligent man. And he said, "Vinny, I'll do that for you." And he wrote this, and I remember reading it, and it made me cry, the way he worded it.
What did he say?
Oh, it's just, the refined words that he put in there about me as a person. And somehow I got parole.
What did he say about you as a person? I want to know.
What did he say about me as a person? George and I, George has been an older black guy, he kind of known with me being mixed race. He was actually seeing a white woman at the time. It was basically coming to visit him in prison, and he said, "Look, I know things ain't easy for you out there." And he just said, "Look, this is not a place for you. You know, what brought me here was my temper. You have got that temper, and if you carry on the way you're going, you're going to end up living my life." And when I got parole, and I came back to the cell and told George, because we all used to commute, so we all used to get in a little group and go and sit in the cells and talk about things. And I went in and I told George, and that's when George gave me a slap across the face and said, "You come here again and I'll kill you." And he was very serious when he said that, believe you me. And you know, I'll never forget that day, and I'll never forget the slap and all, because it was a slap.
Was it really?
Yeah, really.
Well, it kind of like...
No,
you up in a sense,
literally,
didn't it?
yeah. It you know, we'd sat on the end of the bed, and I was there and talking away to him, and he just literally stood up, and he just went right across, and he said, "Listen, I mean it."
Wow.
You know, and
Wake up call.
yeah. Well, George was that kind of person. He had that kind of effect on you, and he did.
But he was like the first, apart from forgot the name of the milkman. Mick. Apart from Mick, he was really the only one that bothered to give you the time of day and actually listen to you and believe in you in a sense.
But George was very, like I said, was very intelligent and very articulate, and you know, I was very surprised when, you know, I heard him speak, and when he wrote that report for me, you know, I'm thinking to myself, why are you here? You know, but you know, he got a temper, and unfortunately he lost control. And he's seen some good in me and said, you know, I don't want you to come back here. It's not for you.
What happened when you came out?
Oh, when I came out, you know, I gone back to the drugs again within maybe 6 or 7 months. Started earning a little bit of money because I couldn't find a job coming out of prison, trying to find a job.
And back then as well, no schemes helping. Nothing.
Came out of school with no education as well, so things were very difficult. Ended up going back onto the drugs. Was with my first wife, got 2 boys, Fraser and Ruben, and you know, even though I was still bringing money in the house, I was still using the drugs, you know, and that money was coming from the drugs. So my wife turned around to me one day and said, "Look, you know, I don't like what this is doing to you. I'm giving you an ultimatum, me or the kids." So I chose my wife and the kids, and decided that I will do it cold turkey. I tried the methadone route first, I won't lie to you, and that wasn't for me. So I ended up going cold turkey. So cold turkey means you lock a door, put yourself in a room, a few bottles of water, bit of food, don't come out. I didn't come out for 2 weeks. Sweats, shakes, peeing yourself.
Tremendous amount of willpower to do that.
It was, yeah. But, you know, that was 20 years ago, and I've never gone back. And not relapsed once.
That's absolutely amazing.
So, you know, doing cold turkey, I think, was the right way forward for me. But the other thing was I had to get rid of all my friends.
Yeah.
I had to disassociate myself with everybody.
That's a big thing, because if you really want a change in your life, you cannot keep doing the same thing and expecting.
No. Most people who have an addiction go from one addiction, try and substitute it with another addiction. For example, most heroin addicts or coke addicts or crack addicts end up going to alcohol, or they mix the two. So they don't have to have that much crack and heroin because they've got the alcohol as well. And that's either way. Majority, I would say 95% of my friends who were heroin addicts and crack addicts at the time, are all dead.
Wow. And you're
95%.
Still here. Yeah.
And I'm still here. So, you know, I think for me, George, Mick, and my wife giving me an ultimatum made me realise that I'd really got to make some changes. And to be honest with you, watching myself, looking myself in the mirror with my face sucked in and, you know, deteriorating, and I just said, no, I can't do this no more. And that's when I decided, like, I got into training. I would go to the gym 3 times a day, 7 days a week, to a council gym, because I really didn't have the money at the time, and live my life at the gym all the time. And
how did that help you?
I threw myself into another obsession as the training became very obsessive.
Yeah.
And that's all I lived for, you know, because I know I'd got to make these changes, and I know if I didn't have done that, then it was not going to happen. So I threw myself into training, started to get myself into work, and I worked for a company called Capita, and I worked in housing. And I worked myself up the ladder right through to housing management, and I ran an estate in Nottingham called City Homes, the caretaker service. Did that for about 10 or 15 years and decided, you know, politics wasn't for me, you know, it's too political, and decided to be a personal trainer. I meant to do it. People kept on saying, Vinny, you live at the gym, why don't you become a personal trainer?
Yeah.
And that's when I decided that I get into personal training. And I became a personal trainer 9 years ago. And I started with a company called Virgin Active. And when I used to commute from Nottingham to Sheffield, so that's where I wanted to go to a gym where I never knew anybody, never met anybody. And on my interview, my general manager, who used to be Sheffield Wednesday football player, Phil, and Phil said, I said to Phil, I want to be an elite trainer within 6 months, and I want to be #1 in the country within a year. And Phil laughed in my face and said, it's not possible. I've been a personal trainer before becoming general manager. It'll take you 2 years even to build a client list like that.
What did you think when he said that to you? Did that sort of make you think, well, I have to do it now?
No, that made me more determined to make a point.
Yeah.
And I says, on the day when I become...
That's a competitive streak coming out in you again, isn't it?
I said, when I get to #1, on the day, I don't want you to say anything to me. I just want you to grab hold of my hand and shake my hand and say, you've done it.
Yeah.
So within 5 months, I was an elite trainer. And within 9 months, I was #1 in the country.
That's amazing, wow.
And that's out of 752 PTs, and I was doing 22 to 23 sessions a day, from 6:30 in the morning till 8:30 at night, half-an-hour sessions, because it was that intense.
Well, after the break, I'll be showing you the final part of Vinny's incredible story. So make sure you stay tuned. Welcome back to the Chrissy B Show, everyone, your place for all mental health, well-being and success topics. So we've just heard from Vinny Gee, who has explained how he became the #1 personal trainer in the country within 9 months. Let's hear the final part of his interview. How did that feel for you, achieving that after everything you've been through? It's
made my path in life for me. it showed me that I was worth something. Before, I'd ever thought that I was worth anything. Even when I was working up in, you know, for the capita in the councils, I never felt that I was achieving anything. I was just doing a job. But when I became a personal trainer, it was actually changing people's lives. People turning around to you going, I never wanted to tell you this, but I'm telling you now. You know, when I started with you, I was on antidepressants. Since I've been with you, I've stopped taking them. You've changed my life. You know, when they come up to you and give you a hug, that I've changed their life so much from the weight loss and everything else. You know, there's many times I've cried with clients because you do get that emotionally attached. Yeah. And for me, with my life experience and helping people as a personal trainer, you've got to get inside a person's head. And that's what I did.
Dad, what do you think what you went through helped you understand people better and their struggles?
By God, yes. Yeah. With the life that I had, without a shadow of a doubt, I knew when to be compassionate and when not to be compassionate. You know, if I tell you my rules of my gym, you know, when I set up my own gym 2.5 years down the line when I started at Virgin, and I got my own place going, and I have 4 rules. If you're late, you get punished. If you want to drink a water, you have to ask for it. You have to clean all your own equipment, and you put your own equipment out, and you cannot use the word can't, because in the word can't is the word can. And I know how far to push it. So, you know, that's when I actually felt like I'd gone somewhere with my life.
I love how you turn things around, because there are people that have, you know, they go through terrible things in the past, and they can't find it in them to ever be compassionate towards other people. It's like they feel so bad about what they've been through that it's like they think that they have nothing to give, and they don't have it in them. They think they don't have it in them to ever be nice to people because of what they've been through. It's like they're trying to, it's like payback.
Not been
but
the case for me.
in your case, no matter, you know, despite everything that you went through, you still somehow changed inside, that you were able to.
Well, this was my ethos when I was a kid growing up, and knowing when I had my own children, and I have 4 children, and 2 boys and 2 girls. I said that I was never going to lay a hand on my children, and I have never. My eldest is 34, never laid a hand. That, you know, I was never going to put my hand on any partners that I was with. So I kind of took those things away. And to be honest with you, because I never had that family at home, my clients were my extended family. So that was my family. So therefore, you know, when they felt they weren't underachieving, I would feel them not underachieving. When they were happy, I was extremely happy. You know, so that's how passionate I was. I mean, for you to achieve something, you need to be passionate. For me, and that I was very passionate with, and still am to this day, even though I've just retired.
What are your plans for the future? Because though you retired,
I am now become an inspirational speaker. So I now go into schools, the age groups from year 9, year 10, and I go into schools, show my video, and talk to them about, you know, the difficulties that you know they've got ahead of them. Try to point them in the right direction of making the right decisions. If there's issues, that there is a system out there for them to use, to get advice, to use it. Don't try and take it on yourself like I did. Do it. And the talks that I've done so far has really worked with some of the kids, because the last school that I spoke to, 2 of the girls, who were 2 of the hardest girls in the school apparently, from what I was told, were crying their eyes out when I finished the show, the talk, and you know, gave me a big hug and said thank you. So, you know, that's more what I'm doing, and obviously doing more of OCD, obsessive compulsive cleaning.
Vinny, how did what you went through impact relationships?
I think in my first marriage, Susan was a great wife, without a shadow of a doubt, because she supported me through the times that, you know, I was going through the drugs and everything else, she was always there for me. At no time did she ever give up on me. I think our relationship deteriorated because I changed my life that much with the training, and got so involved with it. I kind of neglected, I'm not putting it down to my wife, but I found a different direction. And in the direction that I wanted to go in, my wife wasn't looking that way, because she was a very good mother, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, she was about the kids, you know, and I was always about my kids, but I also wanted to progress in my life. And Susan wasn't looking in that direction that I was looking in. And I think when I left my wife, we'd been together for 19 years. You know, we'd been married for 16 and we met 3 years prior to that. So we'd had 19 great years together. So for me, it was a very difficult day leaving, knowing that I was leaving my kids. And, you know, for a while it affected our relationship when I left, because she started to get really, obviously, emotionally upset, the fact that I'd walked away from this woman who, you know, loved me as much as she did and never expected me to walk away. And for me, I never had any intentions of that, but I just felt, you know, I needed to make those changes, or I didn't want to relapse.
Yeah. There was always that kind of thing in the back of your mind.
That's the biggest thing at the back of the head.
Yeah.
And
did she understand that though? Did you communicate that to her at the time?
I tried, but sometimes women don't want to listen, or a man don't want to listen. And at that point in time, the fact was she was more concentrated on the fact that I left.
Okay.
And I felt so bad for a very long time. And I think I got punished for that as well. So that was very difficult and very traumatic for me, because they were my kids who I was always there for. I was there on both of their birth, you know, and went through, you know, some hard times with that, you know. So that was another very difficult part of my life, having to walk away from my wife who was with me for 19 years. But I still have a great relationship with her now, far better now than I did when I left. And my boys, you know, my boys are 23 and 21. Fraser's a shoe chef and Ruben's a personal trainer.
Really, for the daddy's footsteps?
Yeah.
That's nice.
He was great into his sports.
Yeah.
He's a Sagittarius like me as well. So he's bound to take my genes to a certain degree, where Fraser took his mother's genes and was got into cooking, which is a very good chef.
Brilliant. What about love today, Vinny? Does that kind of put you off relationships, or are you open to that?
I've gone through 2 marriages so far. First marriage lasted 19 years. My second marriage lasted almost 9 years, 12 years. It's not been a good ending. I've walked away with nothing and gave her everything. So, but that's again another mistake that I made of marrying somebody 17 years younger than me. Okay. Really, yeah. I'm a lawyer.
Oh so. Dear! Oh, you're asking for trouble, eh?
Yeah, commercial litigation, you know, and it's a top firm in Manchester.
Yeah. Oh no.
So I kind of, bit the bullet and walked away.
So does that mean love's off the cards, or would you say you're still open to it?
I'm still open to it.
Good.
You know, I kind of never tend to give up on life and thinking that there's always another door to open.
That's what I was going to say, because
I can't do that.
From the other areas that you've spoken
I've kind of learned, I'll be very honest with you, you know, this last 6 months, I drove around in a brand new Range Rover, which I've had right from brand new. You know, I wear all the watches, I love my designer clothes. But you know, this last 6 months, I shut my business, I sold my car, I put a load of money in the bank and said, Why have I suddenly turned the opposite? Where, you know, you're designing this, you love this. And you know, some people have whispered in my ear, do you really need to do this to impress people? People love you for who you are.
Yeah.
And that's when it's all gone. I've decided I don't want it no more.
How's
I've gone, yeah, it's full turnaround again.
Yeah?
Yeah, so yeah, I do learn in life still. And there's still time to learn.
Brilliant.
I'll never give up learning.
And it's lovely that you're still giving.
Oh yeah, I'll always give. That to me will always, that is my ending for me. If you see my video, it says, you know, all I want to do is spend the rest of my life is helping and giving something back. Because I never had that choice when I was a kid.
Just one final thing, Vinny, that I wanted to ask you. If someone's watching now that has been through a really difficult past, or maybe still there, living that kind of life, and they're thinking that I can never change, that things will always be bad for me, I've just got this bad luck and it's never going to go, what would you say to them? What advice would you give?
Well, you know, I would look straight into the camera and say, look, if my story doesn't inspire you and doesn't say, well, you can make those changes, then, you know, there is good out there. You've just got to keep pursuing. Don't give up. Don't let the system pull you down.
Yeah.
And I think for the people that I've met over the years now, it's just inspired me more and more to keep going in that direction. You know, and when somebody turns around to you and said to you, you know, how much you've changed their life, why would I not want to still carry on doing that?
Brilliant. Vinny, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for sharing your story on the show.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much to Vinny for sharing his story with us. Well, after the break, we'll be watching an inspirational documentary about bodybuilder Micquel Wright. So don't go away. Welcome back to the Chrissy B Show, everyone. And if you've just joined us and if you didn't know yet, we are the UK's only TV show that's dedicated to mental health, well-being and success topics. Well, so far today, we've heard the incredible story of Vinny Gee, who overcame a life of crime and abuse to make a real success of himself as a #1 personal trainer. Now we're sticking with the fitness theme to bring you an exclusive documentary courtesy of OnTrax Productions called How Fitness Saved My Life. Here we meet Micquel Wright, who also overcame a life of crime and imprisonment to become a competition-winning bodybuilder. Let's take a look.
Bad decisions, bad choices. I wouldn't say it was lack of ambition because I was very ambitious. I just didn't know how to obtain the things that I wanted. And, you know, growing up, everyone I knew either worked 3 jobs or sold drugs. So I didn't really know any other outlets, you know what I mean? Any other options. And that gauged who my role models were, basically. Like the people who I looked up to was people who, you know, seemed on the outside to have had an easier life, which, as I said, in my community were people who committed crime. There was no easy way out. I grew up, small house, single parent family. You know, the cliche. I was the only child. I didn't really like to spend a lot of time at home, so I was always out in the streets. Obviously, you know, things escalated. I used to start bonfires, used to just, you know, do stuff. I was very mischievous. I had a lot of energy, do you know what I mean? I needed somewhere to channel my energy. Growing up, I was very ambitious, and the people around me didn't really have much stuff, do you know what I mean? Most of the neighbours knocking the door for sugar, milk, tea bag. My next door neighbour to my right used to start a big issue. And like when I used to go into town, I used to see him, it's quite embarrassing. So, you know, we came from like nothing really. But my mum worked a lot of jobs and, you know, the electric meter was still coming on, do you know what I mean? Like, we still never had much money and it was kind of like, this ain't the life that I want when I grow up. In my younger years, yeah, I went through so many bad experiences and so much stuff. I seen like gun attacks, knife attacks, carjacking, so much crime. I was so accustomed to seeing so much stuff every day and, you know, like living that life, like nothing used to affect me. It's only now when I've kind of realised the value of life and, you know, how it affects other people where I'm, you know, very cautious, more risk averse, you know what I mean? Although my dad was a drug addict, I'd tell people my dad's on drugs. And they say, no, he's not. You'd see my dad, he's 6'3", he's 6'4", strong. He'd be going to the gym stronger than anybody else. Still look healthy, do you know what I mean? It caught up on him in the end. But for many, many years, like, he was a drug addict and you couldn't tell, do you know what I mean? I used to run, I used to sprint, and actually I was like the fastest in my school. I've never lost a race to this day. I used to beat kids 3, 4, 5 years older than me. And it got to the stage, I remember I was about 12, 13 years old. My aunt used to come and take me to all the events, and it was like £15 a month I used to go. So my mum used to be like, oh, you going with your aunt? Like, kind of get a bit jealous. So then I used to kind of feel bad for going. So then my aunt would say, oh, how's your sprinting getting on? I'd be like, oh yeah, it's great. I went last week when I never went because, you know, I felt like my mum kind of felt like a bit, like she couldn't afford it. It made my mum feel a bit small. So I kind of stopped really going to sprinting and just thought, you know what, I need to make a living for myself. And I think the day I brought my first pair of trainers and come home and seen the smile on my mum's face, from there it was kind of like, yo, you're a man now, you need to learn to look after yourself. I actually got a job from very young. My uncle, who was a carpenter, used to take me on a building site. I was accustomed to making like £400 to £600 a week at the age of 15, 16. So I spent my money on cars and motorbikes, so I was driving from a very early age. I was riding motorbikes from a very early age, and that's kind of how I got onto the police radar in the first place as a little nuisance. So when I was 16 years old, I was having problems at home. Me and my mum wasn't getting on at all. I think I reminded her of my dad, you know what I mean? I wanted to be the man of the house. She, you know, wanted to meet a new partner. I was alpha male, going to the gym, like, who's this man? He ain't coming in my house. And I kind of probably made it harder for her. Long story short, a lot of things went on that year. My mum called the police on me. I was in at the police station. Me and my mum had rows, like, do you know what I mean? I smashed windows at my grandma's, I smashed windows at my house. Like, I was just a nuisance, you know what I mean?
Why did you smash things?
I think it was a way of, like, I was angry, do you know what I mean? Because I knew I was basically trying to say, look, just help me. I can be anything I want to be, but I need that support. Do you know what I mean? I'm young, I haven't got the money. I couldn't really get that support. My mum came to me one day and she says, Micquel, I'm moving out in a week. You're going to have 2 weeks to find yourself somewhere to live. I just shrugged it off. Then the day come, the removal van came, she moved all her stuff out. And I think like after 2, 3 days of moving little bags and boxes, she was gone. And I was just like 16, left in this house, all my stuff still in my bedroom. The whole house is empty. That's how my aunt came heavily back in my life. She's looked through the letterbox. Says, oh, the house is empty, what's going on? So I said, oh, my mum moved out. She's gone, what? So my mum moved out. She goes, well, you know on your own? She goes, Micquel, you're 16. She goes, you're a baby. What makes you think you're a big man and you can live on your own? I said, I'm nice, obviously. Got money, got a car. She said, nah, forget all that. She said, come in to live with me. I went to live with her. Got a job within weeks, started selling CDs in town, was doing quite well. And then I met my girlfriend then, my son's mom. But when I met her, I kind of lost a lot of focus. I was like young, 16, head over heels in love. Like, it wasn't about what I wanted to do in my life. My whole life I'd been chasing about what I wanted to do. Now it was just about being happy, what I thought was happy. See, the thing is, when I first went to prison emulated my local area. It was almost like going to prison was a stripe, like getting your honours at university. Prison for me was Sparkbrook, was Birmingham. I went in there, all my school friends was in there. I remember feeling really embarrassed because I know we say you shouldn't think you're better than people, but as I said, I always had a different plan for my life than them people, do you know what I mean? I always thought I'd end up in a different place. So when I actually was on the wing with him, I'm thinking, oh my days, I can't believe I've landed here. And the first morning's possibly the most memorable. When you come out and you get your breakfast and you think, yo, this is for real, like, I'm eating breakfast, like, I'm walking up the landing, like, seeing all these faces. Do you know what I mean? I've got like 10 minutes to eat before I have to go back behind my door, like, the stress, even thinking about it now is horrible. There There's a lot of factors that made me lead to the bad decisions that I did then. Being let down by friends who told me to look after me when I come home and loads of other stuff. But that morning itself, I remember getting into the car, not really a care in the world. I didn't have anything to do with the planning of the cash in transit robbery. You know, I was just asked to drive. We drove down to Wales. We had all the signs. The getaway car that we was using had 8 miles petrol in it. The bank was probably 10 miles away and we still went and done it. So it was kind of like, yo, we're here now. We're in Wales. I don't care if the car ain't starting. Do you know what I'm saying to you? I mean, I don't care if the car's got 8 miles petrol. We're gonna have to roll down the hill in neutral and park it somewhere else. Like, we're going to get this money. This is what we came to do. Do you know what I mean? We went, the robbery was committed. On the way back, we got seen changing cars. I took a long chase. After about, I think, 40, 50 minutes of getting chased, fatigued, I crashed the car, ended up in a field in the middle of Wales, helicopters and dogs out. And I sat there thinking, yo, I've only got 5 months left. Like, you're gonna get birded for this. Like, this is gonna be a problem, man. I don't know how you're gonna get out of this one. The 5 years or whatever I never done. I've done it with young offenders, I've done it with my mates, I've done it in open prison. Like, I've done time then. And even before I went back to prison and got the life sentence for that crime, I thought, if I get through this, and if I can come out the other side of this, like, I'm done, finished, so I'll never commit a crime again. The hardest moment in my whole life, when I got my appeal, my aunt come to court, and like, you know, when you watch a film and you see a funeral, and you see like the mum mourning, like I looked at my aunt's face, and I've never seen her look like that, and she looked like I was dead in a casket. I had some mad sort of vision of me in a casket, looking at her face, and I was dead. That's how upset she looked, and I thought, I can't put this woman through this anymore, and I think from there, it's kind of like changed my whole perspective on life. Then in 2012, after I'd been sent back, I was just on my appeal. I had 6.5 years to do another 3 year, 3 months. My little cousin, I watched him on TV win a bronze in the Olympics. I'm thinking, same DNA. I knew I could have been a sprinter. No one else believed me. I thought, it's my time. Like, I'm gonna use my genetics, you know what I mean, to do something when I get out. I looked up on my wall. I had 2 pictures of bodybuilders stuck up on the wall. And it's quite weird, because I've had pictures of bodybuilders on my wall since a kid, but I've never really wanted to be a bodybuilder. And then I looked and I thought, bodybuilding. Yeah, I thought I'm going all the way to the top. And I started training differently, started eating more regularly. I started becoming a lot more focused.
What was the first day like when you came out?
Weird, car sick, going too fast, arguing with my aunt. Like, everyone wanted to come pick me up. My mate's like, yo, I'm coming to get you in Lambos for us. I'm like, nah, my aunt's coming for me. My aunt come and pick me up, I remember, and she's doing like 30 miles per hour. I'm saying, slow down, slow down. I'm really happy, she was crying, and I was trying my hardest not to cry. I know in the dark time it's hard to be positive and say, yeah, let's go, but it actually does work. And in the mornings, most mornings when I'm doing my cardio, I watch a lot of bodybuilding motivation stuff on YouTube. And the footage most times is irrelevant for me, but the words, especially from, you know, like powerful films like Pursuit of Happiness and, you know, a couple of stories, what I've seen where other people have made it through. And, you know, sometimes people who are moaning and complaining, they look at their story compared to someone else who's got an even more tragic story, which has turned to a powerful story. They've got to kind of weigh up what they're really complaining about and just, you know, stay positive and want better, want more. So what's this here?
It's the get old gym. This is what we do in the hood, innit? You got the bike. Yeah.
How much is the membership for this gym, bro?
£2, G. Put it in the kitchen.
£1 on me.
All day.
Blows a kiss, Mary.
Huh?
Ah.
As you can see, I've only put on 2 stone. Quite. Right, that's a test run.
You carry on because I put that in there.
You know what I'm like?
Ate your chocolates. Really good. Wow.
Got him! Ready? Yeah.
Many thanks to OnTrax there for allowing us to show that wonderful documentary. And if you'd like to watch it again, you will be able to find it in the contributors section of our website. Well, that's all for today's show, guys. I do hope you're feeling as inspired as I am. And the key message from both Vinny and Micquel is that no matter how damaging you might feel your past is, no matter what bad decision you might have made along the way, you can always turn it around and succeed in life. And if you have any comments that you would like to share about this program, or if you have something that you would like to share on the show itself, you can get in touch with us. You can email us on info@chrissybshow.tv. You can also tweet us at Chrissy B Show or leave a message on our Facebook page, The Chrissy B Show. Until next time, bye-bye for now. Well, after the break, we'll be watching an inspirational documentary about bodybuilder. Here we meet Micquel Wright, who also overcame a life of crime and imprisonment to become a competitive winning bodybuilder. Welcome back to the Chrissy B Show, everyone. And if you've just joined us, and if you don't know yet, we are the UK's only TV show.